All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Tech Tuesday. Appreciate you all being here. If you guys wouldn't mind giving me a thumbs up in the chat, if you can see me okay, you can hear me. We're just right in the chat or do the, okay, perfect. Thank you, Maciel. I really appreciate that. Perfect. So let's get started. You guys should see a QR code on your screen. This is completely optional, but if you want to scan it, if you have a phone or a tablet nearby with a camera, this will take you to a test survey that we're going to go through today. But you can take this survey right now, and it's very short. It's a 5-question quiz, kind of fun, just to see how the scoring works in Qualtrics on your end. I also have it in the chat. There should be a link there. It says take the test score survey here. So if you're on a laptop, you don't have a phone on you, that's totally fine. You can also take it in the chat. Again, completely optional, but feel free. I hope you find it to be a fun little survey. But today we're going to be talking about scoring in Qualtrics. So this is part of a 2-part series that I've done for the past couple of weeks. Last week we did a session on Qualtrics for beginners, how to build a survey from scratch, adding questions, sending it out to everybody, and then collecting and analyzing the answers. Today, we're going to be talking specifically about one feature of Qualtrics that I get asked about a lot, and that's how to add the scoring function or numerical values to your survey. So if you don't know who I am, my name's Vanessa. I'm with ITS Communications. I do a lot of stuff in Qualtrics, and people ask me a lot of questions. So I hope that you guys, if you're using Qualtrics, you find these sessions really useful. Feel free to ask questions at any point in the chat. I do have everyone on mute just to limit background noises and distractions, but you can pop a question in the chat at any point. I can see when they're popping up, and I'll be sure to answer them as soon as I have a minute to just stop and look at the chat. We're also recording the session right now. So after the session's over, I'll be sending a follow-up email to everyone who registered. It's going to have a link to the recording as well as other links to guides that will show you how to do the scoring function in your own survey. So if you need to go back and refer to anything, you can do it at any time. So let's get started. So like I said, we're covering how to use the scoring tool, where it is in Qualtrics, and how to access it. We're also going to be talking about how to display the scores in Qualtrics, because there are a few options of how you can actually show a person what their score is, whether you want to or not. There's also a way in Qualtrics to have one survey measuring multiple things. So if you've got multiple categories that you're trying to measure, it is possible to do that in Qualtrics. And then finally, once you do all that work and everybody takes your survey, where you go to find what those scores are. So really quick note, while anybody is welcome to join the session, this assumes that you already have kind of a basic level of how to create surveys in Qualtrics. So we're not really going to go over how to create the surveys. We're assuming that everybody's created a survey and they're just trying to add the score. But if you did miss the beginner session and you want to go back and review it at any point, feel free to go to that URL there, its.weill.cornell.edu/techtuesday. I'll also be sure to send it in the follow-up email, just in case you don't have anything to write that down with. No worries. I'll make sure that you have all the information. So scoring in Qualtrics, what is it? Very simply, it's just assigning a numerical value to the answers that you put in your survey. And there's a lot of use cases for it. So off the bat, you can do quizzes and knowledge checks. So if you're faculty or perhaps a learning specialist here at Weill Cornell, where you want to do some knowledge checks to make sure that people are understanding the material you're presenting, Qualtrics is a great way to do that. And you can assign scores to your answers so people can see how they did. There's also a lot of self-assessments. I've helped a couple of departments complete self-assessments in Qualtrics where somebody takes it and then they get a score at the end that shows them how they did on a particular scale that's been set up. So you may have seen this on certain websites, things like, how much anxiety do you have? Take this survey to find out. And there's a scale that shows you what those measurements are. We're going to do a little something like that today so you can see how it works. There's also things like satisfaction surveys, how somebody felt about an experience. You can create a scale and see how they did from maybe 0 to 100, how you did there with the experience. And then also research studies. So if you're trying to export data into a statistical analysis tool and you need to assign values to certain answers to get that, you can do that in Qualtrics as well. So not every question type in Qualtrics allows for scoring. I've put here on the screen the question types that do allow for it. And we're not going to be able to go through all of them today for the sake of time, but I will go over the 3 major ones that most people ask about, which is multiple choice, matrix questions, and some text entry, because I think that one is very interesting in how you can set it up and the different ways that you can compile correct answers. So we're going to go through at least 3 of these today, but I'm going to send you this slide deck with all of the options that are available, just so you know in the future. And Qualtrics will definitely let you know which ones are available for scoring and which ones are not. So without further ado, let's go into that survey that I sent you guys at the beginning of the session. So let me just do a new screen share, and we're going to go. All right, so you all should be seeing the survey, and it is in the chat, although I see that somebody has trouble seeing it. So I'm going to put it in the chat one more time if you want to follow along. And let me put it for everyone. Just bear with me a second. One more time, I'm putting the link in the chat, so feel free to click on it. So here we go. Thanks for taking our random trivia quiz. Each question is worth 20 points. Good luck. So we're going to go through this. What are people with geniophobia afraid of? If you have taken the survey or want to put it in the chat, the correct answer was knees or kneeling. All right. What do you call a group of hamsters? The answers are huddle, gang, kindle, nest, and horde. The correct answer is actually a horde of hamsters. That is the correct answer somehow. Which movie does not have a 100% fresh score on RottenTomatoes.com? So the answer, at least surprising to me, is Casablanca. That was the correct answer. Although I'm going to click an incorrect answer in this case, just to show you some options with the scoring there. And then according to the U.S. Geological Survey about how many active volcanoes are in the United States, so the answer there is about 170. It's actually 169, and most of them are in Alaska and Hawaii, and some on the West Coast, but that's mostly where the active volcanoes are. And then this question here is a text entry. So the New York City Public Library is guarded by 2 marble lions. One is named Patience. What is the name of the other lion? Can anybody put in the chat what the answer is? Just out of curiosity, if anybody got it. Give everybody a second to see. I think everybody's going to be shy. There we go. Thank you, Maria. Fortitude. So I'm going to type that in. All right. And let's see how we did. Let's submit our survey. So here we go. This is the summary of how I did on this particular survey, how I set it up. So you can see my total score at the top, 80% out of 100 points, since each one was worth 20. And Qualtrics is telling me which answers I got correct by highlighting them in green. And then the one that I purposely chose as incorrect, I put Toy Story 2. It shows me that I got that wrong, and it's showing me the correct answer highlighted a little bit in green, Casablanca. And I've got all of the answers here at my disposal. So that's very at its basic how scoring can work in Qualtrics. So how did I put this together? Let's see really quickly. So I have the same quiz with no scores attached to it in Qualtrics here. I've got all of my questions set up, the same ones. So how do I add scoring? Really easy. Up here on the left-hand side, you'll see a bunch of icons in this little menu, and you're going to hover over the one that looks like a switchboard with 2 toggles. And if I hover over it, you'll see that it's called Survey Options. So this is where you go not just for scoring, but to customize a ton of things about your survey. So I'm going to click on that, and you'll see there are multiple categories: general, responses, security, post-survey options, a lot of things here. And I do some sessions over the year about how a lot of these functions work. But today, just for time, we're going to focus specifically on scoring, which is right here. So again, you're going to go to survey options and scoring, and you're going to go to a new screen, which is going to allow you to build your survey scoring. So right off the bat, you'll see Qualtrics tells you which questions allow you to add scoring and which ones do not. So question 1 was actually that text at the top of my survey that says, thanks for taking our survey. Each question is worth 20 points. Obviously, you can't really score random text. There's nothing for a person to answer. So you'll see that's why Qualtrics says you can't actually do anything with this, right? So all the other questions, though, the multiple choice and that one text entry at the end are all available to add scoring to. So right here, you can see I've got all my answers, and now I just have to, in this case, select the ones that are the correct answers that I want to add 20 points to. So Qualtrics lets you do scoring in a few ways. You have to add a numerical value, but it can be a whole number, it could be a negative number, and it can even be a decimal. So if you have a situation where you've got a question where you're like, select all that apply, and you want to maybe add a half point to each one, you definitely can. And it's super easy to do. So in this case, what are people with geniophobia afraid of? The correct answer was knees or kneeling. So all I have to do is select that with my cursor, and you'll see that it turns green. And Qualtrics automatically assigns a number to it. It's always going to put the number 1, but you can change that to whatever you want. So I'm making that 20 points and just clicking out here into my desktop, and it's already set to go 20 points. But like I said, I can make this any number I want. I could make this 10.5 points like we were talking about. You can add decimals. And if I wanted to be perhaps a little punitive and I wanted somebody to get negative points if they got an incorrect answer, let's say they answered beards, I can do maybe negative 20 points. And you'll notice that that turned red. So those are just some visual cues for you as a survey creator to see where you're adding scores and what those scores look like. So red is for negative and green is for positive integers, okay? In this case, I don't want to be so mean, so I'm just going to make that 0, or actually just keep it empty. All right. You'll also notice here, there's a button at the top of all of these score options that says auto. And auto is a really great option for if you're doing any scoring that has a scale. So if I click on auto, you'll see that it automatically scores me from 1 to 5. So this is really helpful for things like a matrix question where you've got multiple parts that people have to fill out with those buttons across the screen. And if each of those is 1 to 5 or 1 to 7, using that auto button is really helpful to just automatically go across the screen with all these scores rather than manually input each option. In this case, I don't need that, so I'm going to hit clear, and you'll see that it's back to blank options here. So I'm just going to quickly put all the correct answers, 20 points. And then this one was 170. And now we get to the text entry option, right? So here, there's only one right answer, and the answer that we discussed was fortitude. So I'm going to type that in. Now, when somebody fills out this question, they have to spell it exactly as I put it here. In this case, it's not too hard because there's only one answer. It's not case sensitive. So if somebody answered fortitude in all lowercase, they would not be penalized for that. They would get full credit for answering the question correctly. But what if you had a text entry question that had multiple answers that could be correct? So let's go back to our survey. We're going to do back to Survey Builder. I'm going to add one more question to the very bottom, a text entry. And I'm going to ask, what is Victor Hugo's longest novel? Does anybody know the answer for that? If you want to put it in the chat, you can. While I'm waiting to see if anyone responds. Yes, Reggie, you are correct. It is Les Miserables. Thank you. So I'm going to go back to my survey options and scoring. And you'll see that that new question is available at the bottom. So what is Victor Hugo's longest novel? And as Reggie said, Les Miserables is the answer. But there's a few ways that people might answer that correctly. There could be Les Miserables as an answer. There could be also Les Mis. A lot of people shorten it, and it's very accepted in popular culture. So we're going to add a few options. We're going to add Les Miserables. We're going to hit this plus sign, To add another option, we can do Les Mis. Or if we want to get really, really technical, we can make sure that we add the accent. And all three of these could be acceptable answers. So if anybody answers any version of this, they would get the 20 points that this question calls for. So this is the most basic way to add scoring to your survey, all right? We're gonna get into more complicated scoring in just a little bit, but at its simplest, it's that easy. There's also a little link here at the top that says scoring options. So if you click on that, right now you'll see that I only have one category called score. That's totally fine in this case. I'm going to show you in a little bit how to add multiple categories. But one thing that you may want to take interest in is this middle section right here that says show scoring summary for category. So in this case, I can opt to let people see their scores at the end of the survey, like we saw a few minutes ago with those yellow blocks showing me how I did. You can also decide to show them what their score is as they go through the survey. After they answer each question, there may be situations where that might be necessary, or you could uncheck both and just not let them see their score at all, or you can even customize a score at the end in a different way, which is what I'll show you in a bit. But there might be a reason where you're making a survey and you don't need the person to see their score. That's for you to know. So there's lots of different options there. You'll also notice here at the very end for scoring options, there's something here that says treat empty statistics for scoring categories as 0. That's completely up to you how you want to add these blank options, what that score is. In this case, I'm fine with leaving it at 0. And I'll just make sure that people can see the score at the end of the survey and hit save. All right. So that's how to do some basic scoring. And when you go back into your survey builder, you can preview this if you want and take the survey to make sure that the scoring works. And if it looks exactly how you want it, you can hit that publish button to make sure that your survey is published so people can take it and that all the scoring that you've added is available for the person to take. So let's get into something that's a little more complicated, which is adding multiple categories of scoring. So what you're seeing on the screen now should be a burnout self-assessment. So many years ago, I actually helped a department put together a survey where they wanted the people taking the survey to determine whether they were at risk of having burnout on the job or if they were already currently suffering from burnout. And this is just a small part of it. This is just one question, but you can see it's a very long matrix style question where you're giving given a statement. It says, I feel emotionally drained by my work. And you've got a few options to answer from never to every day. And this department wanted to test or measure rather multiple categories in the survey. And the 3 categories were emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and personal accomplishment, right? So how can you measure all 3 of those just in one survey? So we're going to go back to our survey options and scoring again. And you'll see now, this is what it looks like for a matrix question to be in the scoring builder. And remember when we talked about auto before and the multiple scales that are here? If I clicked auto, everything would just be assigned a 1 to 7 scale, which if you only had one score for this matrix question, that would be perfect. Like it took me a second to put in all of these scores, right? But that's not what we want to do. We actually want to measure 3 different things. So this is how you would do it in this case. Right now, you'll see that there's only one category, which is score. That's usually the default. But let me go into my scoring options again. So at the top that we saw earlier, you saw categories. So we just need to add what those 3 categories are first. And I'm going to click where it says new category and type in the first category, which is emotional exhaustion. And I'm just hitting enter to finish that up and be out of the text box here. So I've got this category at the top, score, that's kind of useless right now. I don't really need it. So all you have to do is go to the gear icon and hit delete category and it's gone. So let's add the other 2 categories that we actually wanted to do for this survey, which are depersonalization and one more, personal accomplishment. All right, those are my 3 categories. Make sure to hit save. And now you'll see at the top where it says category, it no longer says just score. If I click here, you're going to see all 3 of my categories available, right? So first, we need to set up the measurement and the scores for emotional exhaustion. So all I would have to do is find the statements that have to deal with emotional exhaustion. So I know that the first one definitely has to do with it. I feel emotionally drained by my work. So if I click it, it turns green and I've got my scale here. Obviously, if this wasn't the correct scale, I could go in and manually change those numbers, but just for the sake of time, I'm going to leave it as is. And all I have to do is select every single statement that measures emotional exhaustion. In this case, I'm not really reading. I'm just kind of clicking to, get through the demonstration. So I've got all of my scores for emotional exhaustion done. So all I have to do now is go back to my category and pick the next one, which in this case is depersonalization. And you'll notice now it's a blank slate. So now I just have to pick the statements that have to do with depersonalization. So same thing, I'm just going to pick a bunch of them. All right, so those are done. And now on to the next category, which is personal accomplishment. We're going to do the same thing. Boop, boop. Actually, I'm going to click that one. All right, cool. So those are all of my categories. Those are all the scores that I'm going to give it for the sake of the demonstration. And we're almost ready to go. But in this survey, what I want to do is when the person finishes taking the survey and submits their answers, I want there to be a message at the very end that shows them the score for each category. And then says, for emotional exhaustion, you scored X number of points. And on a scale of whatever it is you've decided, that's what this means. So that they kind of get some value from taking the survey, right? So I'm going to go to the scoring options. And I don't want them to see the score at the end of the survey because I want to customize it completely. So I'm going to make sure that's unchecked and I'm going to hit save, right? Let's go back to our survey builder. Great. And you'll notice at the very end of survey message, I've got one already set up, but I'm going to redo it so you guys can see it. So I'm going to click on end of survey. And normally, here we go. Normally, when you set up a Qualtrics survey, it looks like this. We thank you for your time spent taking the survey. Your response has been recorded. But let's do a custom one together that involves the scoring. So I'm going to hit custom. And if you want to create a new message, you're going to go to your library. It's going to say your name and not mine. And you're going to scroll to the end. And there's an option that says new message. So we're going to do that. And you're going to get this pop-up where you'll be able to create your own message. So I'm just going to name it burnout message. And I'm going to date it so I know when I did this. And I've already got a message that I drafted up. So just so you don't have to watch me type in the whole thing, let me copy paste it really quick. Just give me a second. Here we go. There it is. And let's pull it over here. All right. So thanks for taking our assessment. Here are your scores. So I've got all the categories here: emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and personal accomplishment. And right now I just have a blank where I want the score to go. So I want to introduce you now to pipe text, which is one of the most handy tools that is available in Qualtrics. And all pipe text does is it takes information and data from some part of your survey and just pulls it in or pipes it in to where you need it when you're typing something out. So in this case, I want to pipe in the scores that people got when they filled out our survey. And pipe text is available right here. There's this icon that's the letter A with these 2 brackets around it. And if you hover your mouse over it, it's going to say insert pipe text. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to click it. And you'll see that you can actually funnel in information from multiple places in your survey. So you can, if you've got quotas, you could do date and time, random numbers. I mean, there's lots of things that you can pull in and automate for your Qualtrics survey. But since we're talking about scoring, there is a scoring option here. And you'll see that I've actually got all 3 of my categories showing up right here. So I want to pipe in the score for emotional exhaustion where that first blank is, right? And you can see I don't have to just type in the score. There's lots of options, including things like weighted mean, standard deviation. We'll keep it simple today, but it's kind of nice that there are all these different options that you can choose from when you do pipe text. But today I'm going to do scoring, emotional exhaustion, and score. And you're going to see right here, there's this kind of weird code that Qualtrics throws in. The person taking the survey is not going to see that code. They're just going to see the actual score that they got. But this is just a code that Qualtrics puts together so it knows what data to pull and from where. And all you have to do is do that for each category. So again, type text, scoring, now depersonalization, score, personal accomplishment, type text, scoring, personal accomplishment, score. So now I've got all of these codes ready to just pop in that person's score when they're done with the survey. So in this case, just so you guys can more easily see when that score comes up, I'm actually going to format it so that it's bold and in a different color. So when we take this survey very quickly, you'll be able to see what it looks like. So just bear with me for a second while I get that together. And green, cool. Okay, so that's how you would customize scoring answers at the very end of your survey so people can see how they did. We're going to hit save and see what this looks like. So there we go. There's my survey, end of survey message. And let's preview this, right? So we're going to test out what our survey looks like and what the scoring is going to look like for the other person who takes it. And since we're previewing it, you can see what it looks like on both a desktop and on somebody's smart device. So really important to note that if you're doing a matrix question on something that'll show up on a phone or tablet, they will have to expand and collapse each category. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but if it's a very long matrix question like that one, it could be maybe not as fun of an experience. Let's put it that way. So just something to keep in mind when you're putting surveys together and you're determining which devices people might use to actually take it. So anyway, we're just going to put whatever answers here. I'm just kind of going to go down and make sure that I answer each one. So just bear with me a couple seconds while I do this. And I should we're getting to the end. Done. Perfect. So now I'm going to hit next. And Qualtrics is going to tabulate my score. So now you'll see this is the end of survey message. And we don't have that weird code that Qualtrics popped in. It says for emotional exhaustion, you scored a 19. And on a scale of 200, which I just made up, this means blah, 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 blah. That's what you would put in there as the person who's creating the survey. So this is kind of a nice way to do a self-assessment that has multiple categories. People can see what their score is and then get some value at the end where you tell them, what does that mean? In this case, like, are you emotionally exhausted at work? Are you suffering from depersonalization? They'll be able to know and get an idea at the end of the survey. And you can even take it further. And in your survey message, put something like, to follow up on this or for more information, go to this website, contact this office, make it however you want. It's really cool. So that's how multiple categories within Qualtrics works. I'm going to just check. Are there any questions? I don't see any, but if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. I'm really happy to answer them. So while I'm waiting to see if there are any questions, let's go back to the first quiz that we did. Actually, let me go here. And let's say you did your survey, you added the scoring, you published it, you sent it out into the world, and now you need to determine, well, where's everybody's score? How do I find out how they did? So really easy. I'm going to go back into the first quiz that we did. And this one has 59 scores so far. A lot of them are just test data that I had random bots do. But you would pull the data like with any other survey. There's two places that you'll be able to find it. One is data and analysis, and one is results. And just to help differentiate between the two, data and analysis is where you want to go if you just want to see raw data. If you want to export an Excel file with every single line item being how somebody answered, you can absolutely do that within data and analysis. Result is going to give you an overview of how everybody did, with some really simple visualizations, but helpful nonetheless, okay? So in data and analysis, we're going to go there. And it's going to give Qualtrics a minute to think because it's compiling the data since a few of you took the survey. Let me see if I can speed it along. Or not. Let's go to results first. Let me go, well, that one's working. I'm going to go back to the survey over here. And let's see if I can get results to show up a little faster. We'll do results first. It looks like Qualtrics is just thinking a lot today. All right, so let's go to results. And this again is where you'll see the overview of how everybody did, right? So they're both going to be loading. All right. Thanks for your patience, guys, as Qualtrics thinks a little bit. All right, but it seems like results is working. Okay. So we're going to skip this. So if you haven't been in results in a while, Qualtrics just recently kind of updated the look and feel of what the results page looks like. So you'll see here, we've got the first question, what are people with geniophobia afraid of? And you can see very easily with these simple visualizations how people just answered overall. So it seems like most people got this question correct. But what you want to do if you want to look up score is actually scroll down to the very end. And you'll see a category just for score on its own, separate from all of the actual questions. So this lets you see kind of how everybody did on your survey. In this case, most people got about 20 answers. Again, these were bots that filled out the survey. So, you know, I can hover over any of these parts of the bar chart and see how many people got 100 or 80 or things like that. And that's how you would find the score in the results tab. So let me see if, oh, this one just doesn't want to populate. Let me try one more time here. Let me go to data and analysis and maybe it'll work. All right, well, if it doesn't work, it's okay because I actually have the data saved somewhere else. So let me do a new share. So in data and analysis, if it does show up, there is a section to export. There's a button to export the data. Oh, there it goes. Hold on. There we go. So here is data and analysis. Thank you, Qualtrics, for finally showing it. And you can see each line item of how somebody answered your survey. But again, if you want to look at the raw data and export it and put it in Excel or SPSS or some other tool, you would go here to export and import and hit export data. So I already have exported the data. Let me do a new share. And I exported it to Excel. So let me just pull that up over here. So here is the Excel sheet. I'm just moving a couple things around so I can see it. Okay, so Excel gives you, or rather Qualtrics gives you a ton of data in this format that you may not even use. So things like start date, end date, IP address, you may not need any of that information. What I usually recommend if you're just looking for how people answered is just to look for the column that starts with a Q, and those are the questions. So you can see each answer of how somebody answered your survey. And at the very end, there's a column that starts with SC, and this says SC0, and that's for score. So you can see how everybody scored in your quiz in this case, and do whatever you need to with that. You can visualize this in any way, analyze it in whatever way that you need to. But if you had multiple categories like we did in the second survey, the assessment, you would have multiple columns going across that said SC0, SC1, SC2, depending on how many scoring categories that you created. So you would see all of those scores lined up in your spreadsheet or whatever format you decided to export this data in. So that's where you would find all of your scoring data within Qualtrics. Are there any questions about scoring in Qualtrics? I just want to make sure I leave some time to answer any questions that you might have or demonstrate anything that you might have missed, or maybe I went too fast. Feel free to let me know. I'll go back into Qualtrics. Any questions, guys? I'll give you a minute or so. And if there aren't any questions, I'm hoping that means I explained it well. I don't see any questions. Let me double check. Well, one more time, I will show you where to go just to add the scoring. Let's go back into this survey. Just remember, anytime you want to add scoring to your survey that's already been completed, you're going to go to your survey options and you're going to go to scoring right here. And that's where you're going to be able to find your score builder page to just add the scoring however you need to. And for the most part, I think it's pretty intuitive. But if you ever have, oh, we have a question right here. So the raw data will provide scoring info for each participant for each question asked and the total score. So the raw data is going to provide however you've set the survey up. So in general, with the quiz, for example, that just had the 5 questions, if you just had this one category, it's going to show you a total at the very end of how each person scored for that Excel data. Like each line item was how one person responded to the survey. So in that case, we only had one category. That scoring column is only going to show a total of that person's score at the very end. But if you had something with multiple categories, like the assessment that we did for burnout, you're going to see 3 columns. Each has a total for that category. So it's going to be 3 separate totals. So it's going to show you the totals for each category that you created. Hopefully that makes sense, Roxanne. I hope I helped. Any other questions? Oh, perfect. Awesome, Roxanne. I'm glad I could help. Any other questions I could help with? If not, I'm happy to wrap this up a few minutes early to help you get back to your day. And you can always, I understand that if this is the first time you're seeing the scoring function, you may not have questions yet because you haven't dived into it a bit. But if you decide to use the scoring function and you have questions about using it later on, please feel free. You can shoot me an email. I will be sending a follow-up email to you guys. Feel free to just hit reply and just reach out to me, and hopefully I can help answer your questions and make your survey however it needs to be. But I don't see any more questions, so I'm just going to sign off a few minutes early. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to learn more about Qualtrics and how to use the scoring function. Again, I do a lot of Qualtrics related sessions throughout the year. So if you have questions about particular things that you want to do in a survey and don't know how, please let me know, because maybe I could just set up a session that a bunch of people can attend and learn at the same time. So thank you again for joining. I'll send out a follow-up email with the recording of today's session, as well as some helpful links to hopefully get you on your feet with the scoring function. Have a good day. Bye-bye.